live in a world ruled by tyranny, where knowledge is suppressed and ignorance is glorified. A world where propaganda and misinformation travel the airways at the speed of lies. But in the midst of the violence and chaos, a great awakening is taking place. And as the media empires continue to collapse, a new network is forming. A network of truth. A network of courage. A network of awareness. Peace and greetings. You are now tuned into the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, where we examine current events, politics, health, finance, and topics of cultural relevance in America and throughout the world, while bringing you insightful interviews with guests that will both educate and inspire you. And now, your host of the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, Aura the Informationalist.
Please just tell me what's happening to me in plain English without the mumbo jumbo.
My aura is a network full of awareness and gifts like Aura, the Informationalist.
How you doing? How you doing?
Peace and greetings, people. This is Aura the Informationalist, and you're now tuned in to the Network of Awareness. And we got a great show lined up for you today on this The Truth is Absolute series, and a little bit of the Legacy of Lies series mixed in. We're gonna bring in a guest that I'm very excited to have on. It's one of the first guests that I've had that really understands like what we do here, and she kind of lives it. She talks about it, teaches it, and we're gonna bring her on more than once on multiple occasions. So this is the very first time where we're gonna really promote her book on this show and talk about her book, My Journey to Grace. And that's what I'm gonna call the episode, My Journey to Grace. That's the name of the episode, brothers and sisters. So before we bring on Dr. Lynn Carey, just to let your brothers and sisters know a little bit about what she does and who she is. All right. So Dr. Lynn Carey, she graduated from Life University in 1997 with a doctorate in chiropractic medicine. And she also has a bachelor's in nutrition. And her journey began way before she had 2 spinal surgeries for scoliosis in high school. And afterwards, she was constantly sick, and chiropractic was the first step in her healing journey, and it truly changed her life. And she opened up her own practice in 1998 in her hometown of Wilmington, Delaware. Shout out to all the brothers and sisters in Delaware, by the way, listening. And she practiced there for 18 years. Now, she's gone on to chiropractic mission trips to Brazil and India, where she discovered that it is the only one verse in the universe, and that is love. And during her years in private practice, she also realized that, in order to be healthy, one needs to examine every area of their life. So true. And she loves to empower individuals to create their desired life of health, wealth, and perfect self-expression. And in December of 2016, she followed her bliss, moved to Miami Beach. So she's now here with us in the great sunshine state of Florida, in Miami Beach. And she now continues to be an entrepreneur, which we're going to talk about her entrepreneurialism. And she also homeschools her teenage son, teaching him how to finally and, ultimately and financially be free. So, congratulations to her for doing that. We need that more often. Let's bring on Dr. Lynn Carey, and let's not waste any more time here. and get this show started right and get it started quickly, right? Okay, so welcome to the show, Dr. Lynn Carey, and I'm going to give you a round of applause in advance just because based on the conversation that I had with you, I think it's only right that I give you that round of applause. So before you even say anything, let's give Dr. Lynn Carey a round of applause, please, because you're going to want to after this show. Okay, welcome and grand rising. Good morning to you.
That's amazing, Aura. Thank you for that welcoming. That was amazing.
You're very welcome. I'm very much looking forward to this because you understand the worldly world of things and how it corrupts us spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and all of that. And you talk a lot about that in your book, and you educate people on that, and you've come to that understanding. So let's start from the beginning because there's so much to cover. And I'm going to have to bring you back because I know that with this particular episode, we'll probably go about an hour and a half. And I'm probably going to do several hours with you just because we have a lot to discuss. Let's start from the beginning. Just briefly, I'd like to get to the nucleus. What was your childhood like? You know, what were your aspirations as a child? And then we'll go on to the next thing.
You know, I had, I guess, the normal family structure, right? I came from a big Italian family. I felt loved. I felt wanted. But what I felt was missing was there's got to be more to life. Everybody was just working all the time and not questioning, like they weren't happy. They weren't questioning, why are we doing this? I always felt that. I don't know. I guess I just always was questioning, why are we here? What are we doing? And then my dad died when I was 12, and I was actually angry that he left me here. I'm like, you know, I was raised Catholic, and I'm thinking, they talk about this utopia of heaven. That's got to be better than the hell we're living on earth. Like, I felt that immediately. And I was like, my dad is living the good life, and he left me here in this craziness. I don't know what we're doing here. So I always had that foundation. You know, I just felt like torn in two directions. My mom and I didn't see eye to eye on anything. Like, she was just, I don't know, ignorance is bliss. Like, she just thought we just work. We do what the family says. My brain didn't work like that. And I think that's what led to my scoliosis. You're pulled in two directions.
So now, you know, what was it growing up in Delaware like? And how did you get in? You know I talked about it a little bit in your bio, but how was it growing up in Delaware? And what got you into, you know, wanting to go to school for these particular types of things, and talk about your scoliosis in high school and what that was like? Because I remember I was diagnosed with mild scoliosis when I had just, I think I was in the 9th grade, and it was because I carried a lot of books, and I was always carrying a heavy book bag all the time, and that they said that that's what I had, but it never went any further than that. But you actually got diagnosed with it. So I want the listeners to know what that experience was like. If you could talk about everything that you experienced and what it felt like to have that, and then go through the surgeries and all that, because I know that's brutal, especially at that age that you were at as a teenager.
You know, so I actually diagnosed myself. Like, I knew something was wrong. I remember.
Wow.
Yeah, because I got checked. I got checked in grade school, and nobody said anything was wrong about my back. It was fine. And I just remember it was the summer before high school. I had a bump in my back, and I lost the waistline. Like, I could feel it. It's still there. I could feel it. And I was just like, I don't think that's normal. I didn't feel anything. Like, there was no pain. But I just said, hey, Mom, what do you feel this? And she, you know, freaked out naturally. And we went to the pediatrician, and he diagnosed me with scoliosis and sent me to right there in Delaware, unfortunately, is that A.I. DuPont Hospital. It's like the world-class center for children. Everybody worships, and I have other opinions on that. But so I went there, and I got diagnosed by an orthopedic, and he said, you know, scoliosis, you have to wear a brace, which they wanted me to wear the brace 23 out of 24 hours a day until I was done growing, which could have been another 4 or 5 years. I was like 14 at the time. And the brace was as hard as a brick wall, and it went from my armpits to the top of my hips, and it wrapped around. It was horrible. And so I went for other opinions because I'm like, I can't be wearing this brace. It just was awful. And all the orthopedic surgeons said, oh, you're a good candidate for surgery. You hear a different one about a year through this. He was ready to cut me open. That's what they do. And I wanted to do it because he told me I wouldn't need the brace anymore. I didn't know what I was getting to. I was 15. But the sad part is when I was in the hospital, I mean, this is how depressed I was. And I don't say this as a dig on my family or anything. I really believe it's society. We were so dumbed down, and I came in knowing there had to be more. But I was in the hospital in this torture, but I was like, oh, this is a respite from my life. Like, I'd rather been in the hospital than deal with my life. And I thought, and I always remember that because I think a lot of people create a disease in their life because it's easier to deal with. It's more socially acceptable. It's easier to deal with the disease than to deal with stuff they're not facing in their life.
That is true. That is very true. Because life is hard, especially when you have to involve other people. I think that's the hardest part, at least for me, in my opinion. I mean, because if I was to just deal with myself and solitude, where I find the most peace present day, I have to include other people at some point, because then, they say that too much of anything is not good for you. And I truly believe that, because as much as I say I love being by myself, and I really do, that's not something that I should do for the next 20 years. It's just be by myself. There's things like cabin fever and all these things that are very real. But when it comes to these experiences that you had, obviously there came a point where you had to make a decision. Either you were going to keep feeling like that, where you felt that turmoil, or you were going to do something about it. Can you let the listeners know when that turning point came, when you was like, enough with the nonsense? I'm going to do what it is that I'm meant to do, and I'm going to live the best life I could possibly live.
That was a blessing. That was something that I feel like the spirit found me, because I didn't consciously know that was going to change my life. I just was going through the main system still, had the surgery, and then, they took the rods out. I had the surgery, the rods put in, they took the rods out a year later, which they usually don't do that. They usually leave them in forever to fuse your spine. I don't know why he took them out. I think it's because I was already having pain. And I just remember him saying, oh, you're kind of skinny. You might feel those rods in your back. You might feel them palpable. And this is so gross, right? And so he took them out. I just think, to me now, it's so ludicrous that that's normal. This is still happening in today's world. Like, they still will do this surgery on people. So I was in sickening pain. So not just in pain, but my immune system was shot. You have to understand, the nervous system comes through your spine. They put bone chips, they shaved off parts of my spine, put bone chips all down my spine, because they wanted the bone to fuse. As a chiropractor, I'm making sure everything moves. All your little vertebrae should be moving properly, because the nerves flow through there. That's how your brain talks to your body. So they tried to numb all that down. So my immune system was so sensitive, I just couldn't fight off things. So I got chicken pox a year to the date. I was 16, a year to the date on my surgery, August 18th. And it was so severe. And then I'd always get strep throat. They'd put me on antibiotics, which made it worse. Then I'd get strep throat even worse the next month, and just headaches. And besides, then the sciatic pain kicked in, and then I was just more and more and more depressed, going through the school system. Then I went to college because they told me I had to go to college to be successful in life. I heard that incessantly, and I hated school, but I do what I was told. I worked really hard. I had A's, and I got to college, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I want to do. And it was just getting worse, the depression. And then a friend of mine told me about chiropractic. I read the pamphlet because I just thought it was medical school. I wasn't too keen on the medical world. But I knew I wanted to help people. I felt I would like to help people, but I don't think I understood what that meant. There was that little innate knowing. And the pamphlet said, the power that made the body heals the body. And I was like, man, I've been struggling for 5 years in pain and sickness, and not one doctor could answer why I kept getting sick. Nobody ever said the power that made the body heals the body. I'm like, they don't know, So I just went to chiropractic school. I didn't even get adjusted. I went on the philosophy, and my whole world opened up.
Right. Let's talk about that, because what was some of the eye-opening things that you got to see that were quite disturbing when you first started your practice?
So when I first started practice, what had me the most upset was that I felt like nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. I was like ignorance on fire. I didn't even understand business. I just opened up because I didn't want to work with I didn't find another chiropractor in the town that I felt like I aligned with their principles, at the time. I wanted to just be wellness, and I didn't want to I'm not a pain doctor. I'm not advertising for car accidents. I'm not doing insurance. I'm not doing all that stuff. To me, that's not chiropractic. It was about releasing the stress in the spine to your body. The power that made the body heals, the body can flow optimally, and your immune system can, do its job, and you heal yourself. And I just wanted to tell everybody that the medical world has it all wrong. They have it completely backwards. They view health from the outside in. I have a whole new way of looking at health that's working for me, that we heal from the inside out. The power is within. But what really shocked me is that people didn't hear what I had to say. Like, I remember even specifically on many levels, but I just remember a girl, she was a friend of the family. She was a nurse. She was scheduled for sciatic surgery. And I was like, don't do it. I was telling my mom, call her mom, I really thought I was going to save the world. That was my viewpoint. And she's like, oh no, it's just easier. I have it scheduled. I have time off from work, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, but that's just one example of the reactions I would hear. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with a whole nother level of, now after the last couple of years, I realized we're a program. I didn't understand what that was at the time, but this is like back in 1998, as soon as I opened up. And I saw this, and it really laid heavy on my heart because I was, what is going on here? I feel like I'm not being heard. And I'm screaming from the rooftops, like, we heal ourselves. Don't do that. Don't do that. Like, all these other things are actually killing us. But it was like, I was the weird one,
Wow. So like when you made that decision to start your own practice, which is probably the best thing you could have did, because you probably would have been even more disappointed having to go in a practice that was regimented to the status quo society. And it's interesting you say that about the car insurance and all that, because I know there was practices in New York that I went to when I wanted to get my alignment and stuff. And I noticed that this one place I went to, they have this way of diagnosing you sometimes where they want you to do all this extra stuff, and you wind up going in there thinking you're going to only spend a certain amount of money. And I remember walking out of this place with like $1,000 a month bill if I would have kept going with the treatment that they wanted to give me just to treat my back. And it was kind of weird. I felt a little funny about it. I didn't go through with it, but I remember they were really big on promoting the whole, treating people for car accident and all that stuff. And they had commercials for it. So it's funny you brought that up. But I think as a whole, and you and I have talked about this, when it comes to medicine here in the United States and healthcare, it's a lot of shenanigans. It's all about money, and there's a long legacy of lies when it comes to healthcare here. And what would you, because you like to bring the truth. You don't like to sugarcoat nothing in what you do when you were practicing chiropractic medicine, and even in what you do now and what you have talked about in your book and stuff. And we're going to go to your website in just a moment. But what are some tips you can give people if they truly want to heal from things, physically and also mentally, but to that journey for self-healing? What are some of the tips that you can give people right now?
Some people don't know where to start, or I guess you have to go. I always want people to get back in tune with their inner voice. So I think a great place to see, because there's different avenues you can work on that may be more pressing for you, right? Some people it's health, some people it's money, some people it's relationships or finding purpose. So you have to, you might know right away what area you want to start with. But for all of them, really, I think the best place to start is to journal. And I don't think I think typing on a computer or your phone is not as healing as pen to paper. I think there's something therapeutic that happens. I was even reading that it actually helps your brain, to write stuff out. So you can brainstorm ideas. Right. I think a great place to start is write out what you're grateful for, because that really starts to anchor you into what you want. Like, what are you grateful for? Then it helps you start orienting on what's right in your life instead of what's wrong. It's a whole mindset shift, right? Yes. Then start, looking at what makes you happy, because a lot of people don't even know what makes them happy. But what if just like sitting with a nice cup of coffee, like one of my favorite things to do, and just having a moment makes you happy right write it down. Like pay attention throughout your day where there's a moment where maybe you see a little dog run by. Oh, isn't that cute? Oh, that made me happy. So because you have to start recognizing that, because the happiness, the internal gratitude, that's your life force. Like if you start tapping into that, that's the healing center. And then you get the guidance on you can learn to be led. I'm simplifying this, right? But it's really, it is simple, but we're so layered up with all this crap that it takes time, I think, to uncover. But it's foundational. And then you write down ideas, inspired moments. Oh, I could do this. Some people don't even want to acknowledge their dreams because they don't think they can do it. But what if you just acknowledge that anything's possible and write down what you want and let it go, and then wait for guidance or an inspiration and just keep track of it with your writing. And you start to form a picture and you start putting a puzzle together. You can start getting answers and you're led to what you need to do.
Well said. What kind of coffee you like to drink?
I like a good coffee, like an Italian roast or,
Okay.
I guess a good, not like a Maxwell House, I like a good coffee.
Yeah. And in my culture, from where my family comes from, they drink a lot of Bustelo. And I
love Bustelo. That's my favorite.
That's supercharged coffee right there. You want to talk about a rush? That right there that's gonna do it for you. It's gonna charge you up.
That's my favorite coffee. That's the one I drink the most.
Yeah, Bustelo. Yeah, that'll start your day off pretty exciting.
It's funny. I don't even have a reaction to coffee. I can drink a cup of coffee and go right to bed. Like I'll have it at night sometimes.
No, not me.
Oh, really?
And it runs through me too. Like it runs through me.
Funny.
So it's a good way for me to, if I need to get something out of my system, let me just drink some coffee and it runs right through me. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Let's pull up your website because I want people to know about your book and you want to talk about your book right now. Let's pull this up. And your book is called My Journey to Grace. And let's share the screen for the viewers. Let's put it on full screen for now. Let's do that. And let's share. Just give me a second. My system's running a little slow here. Here we go. Perfect. All right. So for the people that are actually going to be watching this on YouTube, and then of course for those that, for the most of you that will just be listening on audio, we're taking a look at Dr. Lynn Carey's website, right? And the book is called My Journey to Grace, Shattering Mainstream Illusions and Creating My Desired Life. Can you let the listeners know why you chose that title and subtitle?
Yeah, because the first kernel of truth I found was when I discovered chiropractic, but it led me on a journey and I still didn't have peace within. But I had an awakening in 2001 that from all the energy work I was doing, I guess, and all the personal development work I was doing, I can't say it was one thing, but it was accumulation. And all of a sudden I just went into a gray state is what I call it. I call it the gray state because it surpasses all what we consider normal reality. It's like falling in love, but there's no other person around. That's the best way I can describe it. Because, when you fall in love, it's such an addiction, right? It can be an addiction because you think it's from the other person. But if that happens to you and there's no other person, it's like the most amazing experience ever because now the power, that energy is within you. The God source is within you. We are God. And that's what everybody's searching for, right? We think we need more money. We think we want to get married. We think we want a better relationship. We think we want to have kids. We want to do all these things. We want to travel, but you're all looking for the grace within. So when you finally find that bliss state within, changes everything because you find the grace and then you start creating your life, what you want. You build your dreams. I call it your desired life. From that place, it's magical because now you leave. I'm not going to say you're not going to have challenges or struggles, but they're different because before I felt desperate, because I was searching. But when you understand who you are, then, the challenge is just going to lead you to more of who you are. So it just keeps getting better and better. And we're here. The contrast is how we create. That's how we have, the black and the white, the good and the bad, or whatever we want to call it. We need the contrast and the positive and negative. That's how we actually create and manifest our reality. And we do it. So through those struggles, it helps you clarify and become a better focuser and a better creator in your life.
Now, like I always say to my guests, I apologize that I don't get to read these books before I have my guest on, because if I did, I would have to read like 100 books in a very short period of time. Yeah, but I try to make it a point to get to read these books from time to time and get to actually read them all through. Because a lot of my guests, they don't have these books that take a long time to read. Some of them may take anywhere from 2 to 6 hours, depending So I'll make sure I read your book so that when we ever do an episode, I'll do another one with you where I actually read it and I can actually real specific questions based on my experience. Okay. Just want to let you know that. But let's talk about you being a mom, because that is a blessing as well. It's probably one of the greatest gifts a woman could be given, and even a man too, being a father, being a mother. What does being a mom mean to you? And also, can you talk about how you've been able to raise your son naturally and what that actually means?
Yeah. So I wasn't planning on having kids. I kind of had a whirlwind romance and a relationship, and I ended up pregnant. And I know that sounds crazy. Like obviously I know how I got pregnant, but it was like, it was so meant to be because, and I was struggling. I'm like, do I keep this baby? Do I have this? I was really in a depressed state. And I say that openly because I think I actually was aware of, I observe everything. And I tell you, I don't see many people happy, especially if they're moms. Like they can't wait till their kids get to school. They want to get away from them, right? They're not happy. Like I see a disconnect. And I thought, what if I'm like that? I don't want to do that to my child, you know? And then I was challenged with my mom because she thought she was smothering, you know, like I couldn't be my own person. So I didn't want to do that to somebody, you know. I know we're here as spirit, and I don't think this world is to me, I analyze, I'm like, do I want to bring a child into this world? A lot of challenges here, you know. I never had the vision of let me get married, have 2 kids and the picket white fence and all that. I never saw people happy like that. It was like they did that and then they were questioning why they did it, but they were stuck. And in my family, there was, you know, I grew up thinking divorce wasn't good because we were Italian Catholic. So it was like, to me, I saw like people married 50 years, but it looked more like a prison sentence. It didn't look like something I wanted, you know? So I think I was going through all these things, and I went to a healer. She read tarot cards and was also a counselor by trade and very spiritually connected. And I said, you know, my mind's screaming like that I shouldn't be having a baby, but my heart is telling me that I'm supposed to be doing that. And she said, oh, you two, your souls agreed to come together at this time. And that's how powerful it was. Like it came through. And I didn't have to figure out, I have compassion for moms because if they don't have my background, pregnancy and bringing a child into the world is a whole thing in itself of emotions that nobody can tell you, right? You just have to go through it. Like you have this experience.
Right.
But to figure out how you're going to raise them, you're doing what the doctor tells you. Most of them make you go to the hospital. Most people don't have faith in their body to have a natural childbirth. It's a mindset. They're not told they can have it. I mean, how many times, the baby's too big to come out? Like, really? You know, they just want to do their C-section because they get more money in and they can put it on doctor's times. So, you know, but I had all that figured out. Like I wasn't afraid of that part because I already knew the body, the power that made the body heals the body. I was already full away from the medical world at this point. And I was clear enough and educated enough that I was going to have a home birth and we weren't putting any poison, any kind of stuff into him. And I didn't need the medical world, you know, like he was getting adjusted since he was born and I breastfed him. But then I knew to stay out of his way. I think this is where people get confused. If they hadn't figured out, because I already had the grace state. So I knew we were God incarnate. This spirit is coming through me to actually teach me because he's more connected to spirit still than I am. When we're first born, we're really in that spiritual state, right? Until the world pulls us out of it and tells us we're something else.
That's social conditioning.
Yes. And so I just didn't want to interfere. I wanted to let him be him and protect his source. Like, so he had the freedom to choose, you know, and I know that sounds, people will say, oh, you're letting your son choose. And I'm like, he knows. Let me tell you, if we were not interfered with, we'd all know who we were right now. We can make choices for ourselves because my son is one of the wisest people you'll ever talk to. That's because he was always allowed to stay connected to himself. I never interfered. And he makes better decisions than I see most adults.
Hey, the proof is in the pudding. You know what I mean? The proof is in the pudding.
This blows me away.
Yes.
Yeah, I could brag on my son all day. But I was thinking when we first moved to Florida, I wanted to get him a dog because I thought maybe that would be nice because it's just him and I. And we were looking into adopting a dog. And we both love dogs, but I knew they were a lot of work. And I knew he was like 11. So I figure I'm going to be the one taking care of it. I was realistic in my mind. So we go to the adoption center and my son looks like he's going to throw up. And I was like, we're getting the dog. Like we're holding the dog. The dog's adorable. And he's like, I go, are you okay? He's like, I can't breathe. I'm like, what is going on? So we went and sat down. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I can't do this. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I can't bring this animal home. He's like, I can't take care of this. He's like, I don't want the responsibility of taking care of a dog. Like this, like who at 11 can figure that out? I see so many people bringing home an animal who shouldn't be, right? Like I watch it all the time and my son's like, I I can't do it. I'm like, that's fine. We don't have to do this. So we never adopted a dog, and he never looked back. He's good. We take my neighbor's dogs sometime and we love them, but then we send them home because they're a lot of work.
I wish I had the same experience with my daughter, but then again, I don't, because when we got our dog, which I still have, I have my dog Link, who's now 7, going to be 8 years old. And, you know, my daughter didn't really take care of him. She loved on him, but when it came to the taking care of part, it wasn't a thing. But once she left, that dog was always meant to be a part of my life, not so much my daughter. And I feel like the Most High sent this dog to be with me so that when I was feeling that loneliness of having to send my daughter away, that was my companion. That's like my little man right now, you know, like that's what I call him, my little dude, my little man. Like he's got this spirit on him that he's so peaceful and happy, and it's amazing because everybody sees it on him. But it's interesting how your son was like realizing that at such a young age. That is amazing, because most kids would have been like, yay, let's get the dog. Not even thinking about taking care of the dog, just having one, you know, to play with. So that's amazing. But that just goes to show that homeschooling to me right now, with the whole thing with the pandemic, which you already know, we'll talk a little bit about pandemics, because that's a show I want to do with you, like that we'll probably have to spend at least 2 hours talking about. But when it came to the pandemic, something I always say is that everybody now, with the things that are going on in the school, with the whole alphabet gang being promoted and all these other perversions being promoted in the schools, let alone the stuff that the pandemic brought into the schools, I don't think anybody should put their kids in school anymore, at least here in the United States. I don't care if it's private or public. And I know a lot of people are like, well, that's easy for you to say. You know, what if you have kids and you don't have nobody to do this and that? But I think American society, American culture, the United States of America has proven that the education system is not good for the development of a child, especially with all these new things coming in. So what you're doing and what you were doing way before all this is how it should be done now more than ever. Homeschooling, find the way. And I always say that, find a way. Even if it's something where you have to get a particular friend or family member to watch over the child and give them a curriculum to do, because it's all about self-awareness. And it sounds like your son has like boatloads of it, you know, like he really is a self-aware human being. And to have that at a young age, that means that he's going to be an exceptional man. Now, let's talk about this. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of what I was talking to you about before. Because like you're not very pleased with the way society works. You're not one for the status quo mentality. And do you talk about that in your book? Because when do you talk about these illusions? Do you give examples of how the world operates, especially here in American society and Western civilization, where it's very egoic? And a lot of my listeners know that ego stands for edging God out of your life. You know, we talk a lot about narcissism, which I'm pretty sure you could talk about because you and I discussed that prior. Narcissism, a big problem. People edging God out of their life. People not seeing themselves as a spiritual being having the physical experience, but actually just physical beings that are just here for a moment and then you're put into the dirt and that's it. So my question is, because I like to add a lot of questions in one. My question to you is, do you talk about the conditions in society that are meant to keep us down, deaf, dumb, and blind in this book?
Yes. And I probably should do a part 2 now after, because I wrote this the first 2 weeks of lockdown because I was so teed off that we were locked up for this nonsense, because I see through the illusion of disease. You know, I don't live in a disease world and I don't live in the medical world, and I walked away from it. But now, and I tried to wake other people up for years, right? And then nobody wanted to hear it, but I'm like, okay, maybe it's not my job. My job is my own personal journey. But when they locked us down, I lost my freedom to choose, right? They wanted to mask me up, make me go, stay home. I lost everything I was doing networking wise, because I had no more networking events besides everybody I was networking with were completely asleep. So I was just angry that this was happening. And the first 2 weeks, you know, I wrote my book because I just thought, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just thought I always thought I would do a book, but I wasn't ready to do a book at that point. But I thought, since they locked me up, I'm going to do something productive. And then I really, after I wrote it, I really started going down. I was already going down the rabbit hole. Like I already questioned everything in life. So I already had the health piece, the medical corruption. I was going down the economic road. I wanted to uncover the corruption in the money. It took me years because there's so many layers, right? And that's why I feel compassion for people trying to dig through the health fears, because I had a cocoon of chiropractic school for 4 years where I was surrounded by like minds and the right information and my own experience, which was even more powerful. Not everybody had that. That all came together that made me know that I know that I know, like I don't question, I don't have fear. So I was trying to do that with the money. So I'm like, I really want to figure out this money stuff. This isn't right. Like, I don't even like just giving my money over to a broker. And there's a reason they're called a broker. It's just weird. The real estate market, I had a lot of investments in real estate and it crashed on me in 2008. I didn't understand that economic cycle. So it was just like, but it's hard to find people. For me, I always felt it was hard to find the right information, right? How do you find the truth? You keep digging. There's so much more now. I mean, even homeschool, like I did it before it was trendy, right? Because I knew I wasted my time in school. They didn't teach me anything I needed and I hated it. I felt like I was in prison. That's why I chose to homeschool my son. And now there was like 1,000 more reasons that you talked about a few minutes ago. So I give people, for me, it is the book was my journey on how I went outside the mainstream system. That's why I call it Shattering the Mainstream Illusion, because it's an illusion that we have to do things this way and create what you want. And I also just did a master class that kind of did like an hour and a half seconds of audio that really I get a little deeper on giving people a blueprint of resources that they can go to start researching this stuff for themselves. Like it's like a little, society gives us a blueprint to follow, right? Like you go to school, go to college, get a job, get married. Well, it all leads us to, sickness, poverty, and depression, where my blueprint, I'm like, here, this is another path, because I felt like I wasted a lot of time just trying to find tracks to run on. So that's what I gathered all of my research, because I'm always looking outside the mainstream system. And that's what I was putting in my book and in my masterclass.
Did you give up the practice during the pandemic?
No, I gave up the practice in 2016.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. It says that in the bio. I read that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you gave it up in 2016. So you did it way before the pandemic. So I'm assuming that by the time the pandemic came, you were kind of happy that you did, because if that practice would have still been going on, you would have been in a lot of trouble.
I probably would have been arrested, because I know I wouldn't have closed and they wouldn't have masked me. There's no way in hell I would have did that. And, I would have been I would have probably been one of those stories that had to been fighting for my civil liberties in public. That's the mentality I had. So I thought, maybe I'm here locked up in an apartment in South Beach because, I don't know, maybe it's saving me aggravation. I don't know.
That's the thing, though, because you went into the personal development and wellness field. And the good thing about that is what we're doing now is the internet, is that you can reach out to people remotely in that field of industry. And what I found interesting is that when I resigned from insurance, being an insurance agent / broker, like you said, the word broker in itself, right? It's it's all a lot of shenanigans. I know some of my insurance colleagues are like, whatever, but it's all a big scam. All of it. This whole entire country is a lie. It's built a foundation off of lies. And I think that more and more people, the pandemic really exposed that for what it is. So the fact that you were able to make that transition when the pandemic happened, even though you were still frustrated like a lot of us, I made that decision that once the pandemic hit, I was already thinking about making that decision. But the pandemic made it final. It was like God said, the Most High was like, if you don't do this, I'm done with you. Like, there's no hope for you, because I done give you so many chances to get it to where you can really give back the gifts that I gave you. Because it's definitely not through this selling insurance. Maybe some of my personality and the gifts that I've been given, but not completely. And I commend you for that, because there's not a lot of people pursuing their purpose. You did it way before you were put in a position to do so, because a lot of people were put in that predicament and finally answered the call, like myself. So let's talk about this journey that you've been on. What has it been like since you closed the practice down, right, for chiropractic medicine treatment, and started to become this coach / personal development leader in wellness? What has life been like since then? Has it been more fulfilling to live this type of lifestyle opposed to the one you lived prior?
Definitely. Can I be honorable in an honorable way? Can I correct you? It's not chiropractic medicine.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Please do.
Please don't put medicine. Don't take my profession with the medicine.
Okay, sorry about that. All right.
Okay, I'll teach you. But I'm like, it's just chiropractic. Don't call it chiropractic medicine. Not a treatment. It's just chiropractic.
Right. So what is...
Let's not put the question in there.
Okay, yeah. Because even like when I said to you earlier, when I said Grand Rising, right? And then I said good morning, I think. And I only do that because a lot of people don't know what I mean by Grand Rising. And it's because when you say good morning, you're actually saying good death in the English language. So the English language is a spell in itself. Like a lot of things we say are actually not good to come out of our mouths because we're speaking it into existence spiritually. So that's why I say Grand Rising. So I completely understand.
I didn't know that about Grand Rising. I like that. I like that a lot.
It's better to say Grand Rising than good morning because I'm basically like saying good death to you. Good death.
Wow.
But if you can answer that question, what's life been like since you made the transition from being, working, not a 9-to-5, but being a business owner to being an entrepreneur?
Yep. So when I opened my practice, I realized no one taught me business and money. So I just had to go on a journey. See, when I get a question, I got to go research. And I realized a lot of people don't have the answers. I just was reading all these books. And can I say, can I call out people like that Susie Orman made me so mad. I used to read her book. She's like a financial planner. And, they're still telling people to save for retirement and invest for the long term. I'm like, I already knew that was limited. This isn't working. People aren't barely making their bills. Like, then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and he blew my mind. I was like, this is it. Like the light bulb went on, like when I found chiropractic, that the power that made the body heals the body. Rich Dad, Poor Dad said, we have to create asset wealth, residual income, have a tax shelter, create things that pay you whether you work or not, multiple streams of income. And I was like, now we're talking. Why hasn't anybody taught me this? I have to already discover it when I'm in a hole, opening up my practice, floundering because I had no concept of money. Most people still don't. When I talk about those terms, most people don't know what I'm talking about. And that's just crazy to me. So I went on that path. And what happened was I saw a lot of things were coming together. So life is always a continuous journey. We're always learning, growing, and evolving, which that's good. What I just want to alleviate, I don't think we need to be learning and growing and all this stuff in a suffering way anymore. I think we can do it from a joy, happiness, and blissed out state now and be creators. I think we came to create heaven on earth. We don't have to live in this hell on earth that we've created. And that's what the rat race and the mainstream blueprint does for you. So what I was seeing was the people
Yeah, I'm going to be giving you a round of applause throughout the show because we are supposed to. We're created in the image of the Most High, so we are supposed to create heaven on earth because the heaven is already in us. That's what Christ said. The kingdom of heaven is already within you.
Yes, we're supposed to express that and not live as these suffering, martyred people. So all these things, I saw that people were not getting well. They were coming to me stressed out, and I realized I could adjust them all day, but until they changed their mindset, found purpose in life, found their passion, had happy relationships, were financially free, had time freedom, could actually, have time off to heal, time off to choose something that's outside of what insurance dictates. I saw all these things. Was what Robert Kiyosaki talked about the rat race, but I saw how it was affecting people in their health and who was coming into my office. And like they were making choices because they didn't have freedom. They didn't feel like they had freedom to choose because they didn't have the money, they didn't have the time. They were just stuck in the rat race. And then I felt limited because I wanted freedom too. I could only adjust so many people. I loved what I did, but I really didn't want to be stuck in my four walls of a practice. Like I didn't consciously pick that before I was only 23 years old, right fresh out of college. I didn't really have much life experience and I chose that. But then I felt guilty for feeling that I didn't want it. So I struggled with that for a while. And I realized I wanted to really help people more with their lifestyle, personal development, getting financially free, healthy habits, all the stuff I could do that really would give people their power back. I mean, adjustments are amazing. I love them, but I can't be with you all the time to adjust you. Like I always felt like I can't have someone with me to adjust me. I have to learn to adjust myself. And that's when I entered the great state. I realized we adjust ourselves. You see?
That makes a lot of sense. I love adjustments, by the way. It's been a while since I got one. Oh, they feel great.
They're amazing. And that's part of the learning journey, right? And that's getting in tune with your body. Everything's good. But I felt like the bigger picture. But I felt guilty wanting to follow that because I felt like I'm a chiropractor and I'm going to let people down in my office and I'm going to let my mom down and what she thinks I should be doing. It's all these expectations. We live by expectations of other people instead of what we really want. And that's where, for me, I had to break through. But it took me like a 7-year process to do it. So
I like that term, got to adjust myself, because that made a lot of sense. As soon as you said it, I was like, wow, because I love adjustments. But what I really need to learn is how to adjust myself. And we need to do that on all levels, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. It's very important. That's what really repentance is all about, too. If you think about it, repentance is that adjustment. It's knowing you're in error and fixing it so it doesn't keep happening, Yeah. Instead of just being in denial. Because, I can't stand when a person says, oh, I'm going to stop doing that. I was in a relationship with somebody who used to cut me off a lot in conversation all the time. And I used to be like, hey, you got to stop doing that. And they was like, yeah, I'm going to stop doing it. And then next thing you know, 5 minutes later, they're doing it again. And that's what society is like. They want to do better, or they say they do. But when it comes to the actual obligation, even with money, like there's a lot of people that say they want to make a lot of money. But when you give them the blueprint and say, okay, well, this is what you got to do for the next 10 years, every single day. And they're like, well, I don't know if I want to do all that. Well, then you really don't want to make a lot of money then, because that's what it takes. And that's with everything. I'm just giving you an example as far as with money. Because honestly, I'll be honest with you. I understand the importance of money in the society that we live in, here in this capitalistic society, and pretty much everywhere around the world, you need some type of money. But I hate it. I really don't like money. I think it's so oppressing, because it kind of restricts you from just being. Like, I feel like if everybody was just to live their purpose, everybody would be serving each other and everything would be in order. There's a lot of things we don't need.
We may get to that, but I guess my intent was until we need that, there's avenues that we can set ourselves up differently. The problem is we've all set ourselves up in a way that it's hard to dig ourselves out.
Right.
But if we were set up from the beginning, and it takes time and courage to work on it. But if we were just financially free, it's not about the money. It's so we can be free to be who we need to be and not worry about the damn money. That's always been my intent, because I'm like, I know money don't bring you happiness, but it allows you to live the life that you choose, instead of living in, well, I can only afford this today. I can only do this because I can't afford, that's where the pain is. That's where the dysfunction comes from. I feel it. I'm working through my own stuff too. I get it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Residual income is the book creating a nice residual income flow for you?
Well, and I'm kind of rebuilding myself, rebranding, learning to build online, because everything I was doing. So my first 3 years here in Miami Beach was better than I could have imagined. Like, I kept being called to go to Miami. And I didn't, following your gut when it tells you where to go. And right. I experienced all in-person networking, and I was building my online business, but I was building in-person relationships to do it, right? Even my social media, I was meeting people in person, connecting online. I wasn't doing it through the internet as much as I was doing it in person. And that really hurt me when we locked up, because then I had no more in-person events, and I wasn't sure how to navigate just doing it through the internet. And I wrote the book during it. So now but I wasn't doing, in my mind, I would go to a bookstore and promote my book. Well, there was no bookstore event. And if they wanted you in there, they wanted you masked up. And I would not participate in that. So, right. It was like, I'm finding a new way of living, because I realized I'm even different since the lockdown. I'm different. Even the networking's not the same for me. I go to freedom events. I find other patriots. I work in the local community on the government issues, but the networking's different. So I'm navigating a whole new, building a brand, getting my message out. This is where I feel the most, doing something like this is my most passion now. I love sharing my message, because I feel like we're at a critical time, because the consciousness is, we're at a crossroads. We got to raise the consciousness of this planet. I kind of stopped talking for a while, even in my practice, because I'm like, people aren't listening, and maybe it's not my job to wake them up. It's my own job to wake myself up, right? And if people want to know it, then I share it, or they can follow along if they want. But when we locked up and I lost my freedom, I'm like, you know what? We're all in this together, because I felt that we're all in this together. So I'm like, I'm going to keep talking. I don't care if they listen or not. I'm just going to share my message, because people need to know there's another way, because we just have to lose the fear and be given tracks to run on. That's it. Then, and then it makes things easier. We can raise our consciousness. We raise the vibration of the whole planet.
Exactly. Because what you just said, and you said it very well, if we were doing that already, this lockdown would have never happened.
Exactly.
It would have never been given the opportunity to happen. And I think the biggest problem is we put our trust in men and women that are always failing us. Like government, people are starting to become more aware that the governments are useless. There is no great or positive purpose that any government anywhere around the world serves. None None whatsoever. If you look throughout history, governments have done nothing but corrupt people and society, and has destroyed the earth based on the decision making. Right? We're seeing all these derailments, polluting the air, and I just saw this thing with the World Health Organization saying that there's by the year 2030 to 2050 or 7 that there's going to be places around the world that are uninhabitable. According to who and why? So it's like, because you guys are starting to pollute the water now so that you can fraction us off into these little communities of, what are they called? The smart cities, so that they can really control us. And what I like about what the pandemic did too is that it made people like me not look crazy, and you had to start giving me my respect, because even with my own family, it's like, I was the crazy one, coming up with all these crazy ideas of how the world is and what this is going on and all this that I've been talking about for over 2 decades. But now it's like, when the pandemic came, it's like, maybe you was onto something. I'm like, you think? I was onto something. I was speaking truth. So a lot of conspiracy theories. That's why I have a whole series, which this plays into it too. This is like 3 series in one. I have a series called Conspiracy is Not a Theory, because it really isn't. There are people conspiring to keep us at a very low level of perception and of understanding about what this experience that we're supposed to be having and what it should be like, opposed to what they're telling us it's like. And the way they give it to us is very shallow. It's empty. There's no substance to it. When I look at people in society into these, the things like these certain holidays that come every year, the celebrations behind it, all the money that's invested, to where even like, sports and how people venerate men in sports and are so like confrontational. It's like my team. And it's like, do you own the team? Like, it's not your team. You know what I mean? You just root for them, but that's not your team. And then we could go on and on about the players that get paid millions of dollars to hit a ball or throw a ball into a basket. It makes no sense. It doesn't, but yet it does, because when you start waking up to the reality of things, you're like, everything I've been told is a lie. They don't want me to think. They don't want me to have critical thoughts. And even with you, and I hate saying it, but I was like, hey, if we have a discussion about certain things, this is how we've referred to certain things because of the censorship. And that's a big problem right now, is the virtual governments, like your Facebooks, like your YouTube and all of that, which this will be going to, but I wish it was more like we could just speak our minds. But then if we do that, people start waking up even faster. So they, and I don't want to go off in a different tangent about this stuff, because I want to specifically talk about what it is that you do. But you and I will have this discussion further about all of the shenanigans here in this world, especially in this country, because you and I grew up in this country and still here. But what has it been like moving from the Northeast? Is Delaware considered the Northeast?
Yep.
Okay.
It is.
So it's a whole different culture. You know that, right? Yeah. And you're Italian. So Italians have a certain culture too, where it's like they tell you how it is. Most Italians, at least the Italians that I grew up around in New York, in the Bronx, it's like, it's like what you see in the movies, like the wise guys. It's like, I'm going to tell you how it is. If you don't like it, I'll break your legs or whatever if you got a problem, right? That whole mob mentality. But it growing up in the Northeast is a little bit different culture, or should I say a lot? It's a big difference from living in the Northeast to the Southeast, which is considered the South. What's your experience has been like? Have you liked living in Miami Beach? Because I know, and I'm not talking about the weather, because I love the weather out here in Florida. I think it's the best. You tell me to go back to New York to deal with snow and scraping ice off my windshield? Nah, I'm good. But what has it been like culturally for you? What's that experience being from Northeast to Southeast?
I felt like, I guess it's twofold. A couple of things happened because we had the 2020 situation that changed everything. But as soon as I got here, I just felt like I could be myself. In Delaware, and maybe it's because it's my hometown. It's kind of small town, small mind. Everybody does the same thing all the time. If you do anything different, you stick out. Right. And everybody's in your business, and because they're not doing anything else. So it's like, you got to talk about other people. I don't know. I just felt like I couldn't be myself. It wasn't comfortable. Like I felt like you're carrying who you're supposed to be. And maybe that's just me. me. Maybe other people don't feel that way, but that's how I felt. When I came to Miami, I just felt like I could be myself. I feel like I came home. I'm like, oh, this is life. Like it was everything going on. Everybody's getting together, all different people, so much diversity, so many cultures together. And it just was alive and it was amazing. It was better than I could have imagined. But then when 2020 happened, I was heartbroken because everybody I was around was okay with what was happening. Nobody was speaking up. And I was. And of course, I got attacked on social media, all my friends calling me crazy. And I'm like, you know what's even crazier is that I'm the one with the health background. They weren't. And yet they were telling me I didn't know. You know, I mean, I even had somebody hashtag Team Fauci on my comments. So I'm like,
oh man, Team Fauci.
I mean, it's next level. I had a girl who signed up to do the business with me and partner with me. And she was preaching, she was CNN. She just preached CNN. I had no idea. And then I was speaking up that we shouldn't be masked. And she just got flipped out in my comments. I thought she was a really nice, normal person too. I knew her for a couple years. Flipped out and blocked me. And I was like, what in the world is going on?
Normal.
I mean,
she is normal. She's very normal.
Yeah.
She's very normal.
I had to navigate through that. And I kept saying, why did I put myself in a liberal city? Like, I didn't know what liberal meant before. I was never political. And I was like, why am I here? And then my son was like, well, at least we're in a free state. He was like, Delaware's not free. I'm like, that's true. But I got to experience, like I finally found, after a year and a half, I found my patriot people, my freedom fighters. And I got involved with different groups here. And I tell you, last fall, when we had those elections, I'm not saying it's perfect. We have a lot more work to do. But we've made a lot of progress because we got elections. We got Florida out of the ERIC system. We were working on that, which is the electronic tracking of our votes and our information. We got out of that. We got more conservative people elected because this was completely blue and it went red. And I know there's a lot of corruption in the red because I'm not a political person. I'm not a party person. I'm a constitutionalist. I'm more libertarian, really. It's where I lie. But we've done a lot. And to be a part of that just showed me the power of people. So if everybody was doing this in their county, if we went county by county, cleaning up the local government, the election integrity, the school board, and the local government, like the commissioners and things, and the mayor. You know what they were doing? If we were all on them, we'd clean up everything. It would change everything.
Yeah, it would. And then if we were on them, we would actually find a whole new way of governing ourselves. We would do away with them, and they know that.
Yes.
They know that. And remember, they're just puppets too. They're serving a higher order of things that come from a very, very, very dark place. Because there is a force that is very wicked. It's a very satanic force. A lot of these people are wicked. They're into some of the most vile things you can possibly imagine. But that normalcy that you were talking about, a lot of these people are normal. That's what we figured out with this whole new normal and normal. It's like, I always say, there's nothing ever been normal here, okay? Because when it comes to spiritual warfare, nothing is normal. It's the good or it's the righteous versus the bad and the wicked. And a lot of times the bad and the wicked look like they're doing very well, because it's statistically a fact that if you're a narcissist, if you have a lot of narcissistic personality traits, you will always make more money than the perfect that is more empathic. Guaranteed. Why? Why is that? Because the person who actually has compassion and cares and can put themselves in somebody else's shoes is going to understand and look at that person as a spiritual being. They're not going to look at them like, what can I do to get the most out of them? How can I rape their pockets? I'll step on my mother's back to get the next buck. Those types of people thrive in this type of American corporate system that we have. And if people were to wake up, it wouldn't exist anymore, because then we're like, we got to put ourselves in each other's shoes, because we're all having, like you said earlier, we're all having this same experience. We're all in this together. And listen, where's my thing here? Let's give a round of applause for Governor Rhonda Dawn DeSantis.
Yeah.
Because I always tell people, I got the best governor in the country. Nobody could beat him as far as what he's been able to do during this period since 2020. And I feel very blessed to have left New York in 2016 and be in Florida, which I didn't really plan on it. But I made the plans to make the move, and I haven't looked back ever since. I haven't even been back to New York. And it's nothing wrong with that, like New York. I mean, New York is what made me the man I am. Or should I say the Most High made me the man I am. But a lot of growing up in New York City really helped me out a lot in understanding the world for what it really is. But once you made that decision, you moved to Miami Beach. It's been a blessing for you. You're dealing with more people that are like-minded. What is it that you want people to take away from My Journey to Grace when they read it? What do you want them to feel like when they, because, most great books, if not all, you're going to be a different person from the person that first opened it to the person that put it down. So what would that experience be like for somebody that gets My Journey to Grace? Like what's going to be like when they put it down?
Well, I shared my story, not to be all about me, but I like to read other people's stories, because when I hear someone else had a breakthrough, I know I can do it for myself. Like it gives me an example. That's how I learn the best, more than research, statistics, and all that. I like to hear somebody's story, how they overcame things, because I can apply it. So that was my intention. I want people to know that the grace state is within you. You can find it, that purpose, that peace, that blissful love, that's in you. That's what you're looking for, and you can find it. And these are tools to maybe start seeing outside of the mainstream track, that you can do something different than what society is telling you. There's other avenues. So I put those resources in there, and I gave examples of how to do it with money, with health, with homeschooling, a little bit about the government. I only started touching on that because I was into, I learned a lot from Ron Paul. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah. Senator Ron Paul, right?
He was the father. Rand Paul's in there now, but the father, he was a senator also. He's a medical doctor, and he really talks about limited government. He's libertarian, and it connects the economy and the government and all the problems. All the problems we have in society are caused by government and people not being awake to stand to their power. But the government does this. They keep causing the problem, and then they act behind the scenes. They're causing the problem so they can come in and step in to fix it, right? So I just wanted to give people, for me, it's very normal to step outside the mainstream, but I thought maybe more people need to hear how to do it, how I raised my son, how I healed myself, how I found my grace, because that gives you the tools. It might not work for you, but maybe there's something else that I mentioned that will, right? Or it plants the seed that you can do it too. That's everything. Right. It opens your mind that there's another way.
And by the way, people that are listening to this, all this information's in the description box. So make sure that you go to the website for Dr. Lynn Carey, because she has email listing that you can sign up to and get more information, especially all the people that like personal development information. I bring a lot of people on this show, and she's definitely somebody that you should, see what she has to offer. And I'm pretty sure you like it. Because I when I first started talking to you, I was like, when I first saw your profile, and I was like, I don't know, I just had this feeling like, I was like, this is going to be a great guest for me. I think I wrote you something like that. Yeah. I forgot what I wrote, but I mentioned something about that.
You said you're the rare unicorn I'm looking for.
Yes, the unicorn. There we go.
Wow. I'm like, that's cool, because it's funny because when I find someone else awake now, after what we went through the last couple of years, when I find another awake person, you already feel like family. It's like, oh, thank God. It's like this relief. You're awake too. You understand what we're in right now. When I can't relate to the people who aren't awake or not open to being awake at this point. It's like we're in two different worlds.
Right. And that's the thing, is like all my guests have been wonderful for the most part. I got beautiful people that come on the show and stuff like that. But not everybody wants to go against the grain, because the moment you start talking about certain things like politics or the what they call the red pill conspiracy theory conversations. And that's the whole thing, is that the powers that shouldn't be, they've gotten so good at conditioning people to look at people that are self-aware and understand all the nonsense, to look down on them and to start putting them in these categories. Because even though I'm a much more patient man now in my mid-40s, I don't get really upset no more about when somebody says, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, or your podcast is like that. It's like that red pill movement and all that. I used to get upset when I hear that, but now I wear it like a badge. I'm like, yeah, like at least they realize that I'm woke, but not the woke like these kids that, color their hair purple saying that they woke. I'm talking about really woke up, that I understand that I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience. And I'm not going to allow man to dictate what that experience should look like, feel like, or be like. And once you become like that, you become an enemy to the state. You and I are enemies. I'm sorry to break it down to you. I don't know if you realize it, but we're enemies.
Yeah.
And if it comes to the point, what I truly believe there's going to be a civil war here in America. It's only a matter of time. Especially like, what is it going to look like? And I want to kind of get your perspective on this. And of course, this is all speculative, hypothetical, because we don't know. But I have certain feelings about what can possibly happen. And I want to hear what you have to say. What do you think is going to happen when we have another lockdown?
I think I don't think it'll happen.
If it was, what do you think will happen? How do you think people will react?
I think people will say no this time.
I think it's going to be a lot of conflict. I think it's going to be a lot of conflict. I think a lot of people are going to say no.
If they try to enforce it, that's where the civil war is going to break out. Like, we're going to have conflict in that way, physical battle out. People are going to come out and, but I don't think they're going to get away with it the second time.
Right.
Because I think they caught everybody by surprise. People didn't know what was happening.
Yes.
I mean, I see through disease. The disease labels don't scare me. I'm like, they create these all the time. I don't follow that. So people had to get a minute to get their bearings. Like, is this really a scare? Oh, this is I knew right away this was a new world order. We're in trouble.
Right.
So I think it took a month or so for people to be like, wait a minute, this isn't right. So they try to do it again. I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah. See, that's the thing with the whole derailment thing. There's a theory going out there that it's all based on the agenda for 2030, agenda 21, where by polluting the atmosphere on steroids like they're doing now with these derailments and stuff, it's going to create for climate control lockdown. So now, like you mentioned it, they took us off guard with this whole pandemic thing. They can catch us off guard. And when I mean us, I'm talking about the whole entire world, because you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people that are woke, that are awake to the reality, but we're in smaller numbers compared to the world, compared to the 8 billion plus people that are here. We're 1/3 of that population. So 2/3 is always going to be more. But this whole thing with climate control, if they push that on people, that's something new. It's unsafe to occupy these environments. So we got to keep you away from that. So stay inside your home. It's the Hunger Games. Because what they're trying to produce here is the Hunger Games. I keep telling people, they're like, nah, this is crazy. I'm like, why you think they have the movie? That movie's not imaginary. Okay? No, it's not imaginary.
They tell you what they're going to do before they do it.
Exactly. And they want to do it by 2030. So we don't have a lot of time left. And that's why I was like, when I started seeing these derailments and I started putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, I was like, wait a second. 1 derailment, 2 derailments. I'm like, oh, Norfolk, whatever, Southern. I'm like, how can you have that many trains derailed in a matter of a month? That doesn't even make sense, but yet it does. One thing we talk about here is there's no such thing as coincidence, only the illusion of it. I got that from the movie V. You ever seen the movie V?
I haven't, no.
Oh, you missing out. You missing out. Like, you need to go watch that with your son. The movie V for Vendetta. Woo.
Vendetta. Yeah, I heard of it. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, please do. Make sure you make it a point to watch it, because you consider yourself to be, you said somewhat of a libertarian and patriot. That movie's all about patriotism. That's why all those people wear that mask now. It's like a big thing, with the emojis and all of that. We're gonna be wrapping things up, because I wanna bring you on several times if that's okay with you, because
I would love it.
I don't want to cram too much of our conversation into one episode, because there's a lot to discuss, and I want to keep it somewhat regimented, because there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about when it comes to science appliance, and I wanted to save that for another episode.
Okay.
But is there anything else besides what we've covered that you want to say to the listeners right now in regards to this episode, which is my journey to grace? Some lasting words, and you could take as long as you want. It doesn't have to be an elevator pitch or anything. Just some last things you want to mention and say to all of the listeners before we end this episode.
I want to leave with giving hope, because 2020, the first 6 weeks, I was really terrified. And I don't go in that space often, especially since I found my grace. But it really, really threw me for a loop. And I think I was more freaked out that nobody saw what was happening. So I saw how, because I always kind of wondered, how did that happen to the poor Jewish people in World War II, right? Like, how did that happen? And then I was living it. I was like, this is exactly how it happens. Holy crap. And I went down every rabbit hole possible. I already had a lot of the pieces, every so-called conspiracy that wasn't a conspiracy. I was understanding everything. And I was really fighting. I was in a fighting mode. I was fighting the people. I was trying to get in my elevator without a mask in my apartment building, and people would attack me for not wearing the mask. And I'd get mad and I'd get angry and I couldn't control myself. And, I wanted to freaking kill these people. And I was like a lunatic. Even my son is like, what happened to you? Like, I would see people, like I would fight to go into a restaurant. And she said, you have to cover your mouth. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not coming in. And my son would be disappointed. Like, I was always in a fight, and I'm like, what in the world? This is crazy. And the first 2 years, like those first 2 years, and then 2022, I was just trying to put my feet on the ground, but I was still in that, not my zone, I was like, 2023 came in, and I feel like I'm back to grace now, because I feel like I have tools in my pocket to fight this evil. We don't want to focus on the evil. We want to focus on the world we can create. So I'm involved in my local government in a positive way, election integrity, doing my part. That's all I can do is my part. I'm sharing my message, because the biggest piece we can do is to raise our own frequency, our own vibration. Remember who you are, find the grace gate within, because maybe there's only a third of us, but if we're all at a higher frequency, we outnumber in vibration the other 2/3, because the evil can't match the high, the good.
Facts.
It's in Power versus Force by David Hawkins. He measured the frequencies. That's why a small amount of enlightened people can change the whole planet, because the vibration's it's so high and so inclusive and so powerful that all this evil you shine the light on it, it dissipates. So by us raising our own, so I'm more passionate than ever to get back to doing your inner work. And that's where I'm at. Like, I'm feeling my grace state again. I found my place in the local government. I understand what I have to do, and I'm staying in the peace zone. I don't want to just keep posting like all the negative. I think we need to make people aware, shine the light if we see something that's wrong. Yes, but let's not stay in that negativity. Let's paint the picture of what we want our world to look like. A lot of people got to figure out what they want inside. Like, I see a lot of people fighting in the local government, but I don't know if they have peace within. I don't know if they've got a handle on their health or their money, or they're working on their own issues. Do you know what I'm saying? That's just as important. They're like caught up in a fight. The evil wants you caught up in a fight. That's how they win. Divide and conquer.
Right.
So when you get into that grace state, they can't touch you.
Sir, can you please lift your mask over your nose, please? For what? I remember saying, for what? I said it just like that. For what? And I looked at him like I wanted to punch him right in his face.
I know.
And this was at a Guitar Center, by the way. And I just looked at him, and he already knew, like, damn, I should have just kept my mouth shut. And he was like, just to keep us all safe, I don't know what you got. You don't know what I got, and I'm like, and it made me, the pandemic made me very patient in dealing with stupidity. Cause I used to be the type of person, I if I thought somebody was dumb that should know better, I would just treat them a certain way. It probably wasn't the nicest way. I would treat them like they're a piece of crap. That's what I would do. I'll be honest with you. That's how I used to be. I'm not like that no more. I really embrace the teachings of the scriptures and what the Messiah taught about, loving thy neighbor as you love thyself, and really having compassion, because everybody has different understandings. And I guess that's the challenge for us. Faith is our test, because you're teaching people, and now you've come to your grace. Do you have to come to that place where things are messed up, and we're not here really to change the world, so to speak. I think that's the Most High's responsibility. But I think we become examples of the change, and that brings about change. Like what you're doing. You're being the example. You take the initiative. And I'm pretty sure, and I'm just assuming this, but I'm pretty sure you've inspired some people within your circles based on what you've done, and what is now they know the possibility of what they can do based on what you've done. Is that accurate?
I hope so. I'm not sure. I hope so.
Okay. Cause what you did is very inspiring. Like, cause I have a friend that had a chiropractic practice as well. So she left that behind a long time ago and did other things. and she was very successful at it, but she moved on to other things because for whatever purposes she did it for. But I truly believe that we can all be examples. So thank you for sharing, and coming on to the show, because I think you provide a lot of great substance. And I know that just not just in the prior conversation we had, but just this conversation, I learned a lot of things. So thank you for that. And I hope that the listeners get great edification from this, because there's a lot to take away from this episode, because we're all on a journey to grace through the Most High. That's my opinion. Like that. The one thing I always say, the more we get to understand who we truly are, the closer we come to God. The more we truly understand what this experience is really meant for us, instead of having some government tell you, oh, you got to get the white picket fence. You got to get the house, the 2-car garage. You got to have this in place and that in place. It's like, according to who? That's not what my inner voice is telling me. That's what you're saying. And you're coming into conflict with my inner voice. So, brothers and sisters, once again, let me put it up here again, just as a reminder for those that are going to be watching this on YouTube. It's called My Journey to Grace: Shattering Mainstream Illusions and Creating My Desired Life. Get the book, sign up to the website, to the email listing. The website is www.creatingmydesiredlife.com. Anything you want to learn more about Dr. Lynn Carey, check it out there. And link up with her. Show her some love, because we're all in this together. And you're going to get to know her a lot more, because this is not the first time she's going to be on the Network of Awareness. This is the first of many times. So, Dr. Lynn Carey, thank you again for coming on. And
thank you, Orra. This was amazing. I appreciate it. I love talking with you.
Me too. So stick around for a moment. Okay. I'm just going to end this show real quick and give an outro. And let's see what beat we're going to pick here. Here we go. All right, so people from around the world, brothers and sisters in this truth that is everlasting. Like I always say, season 5 is all about great understandings. And when we bring these guests onto the show, like Dr. Lynn Carey, it's all about great understandings. And with those great understandings, we can have great understanding about our experience in this thing called life. And faith is our test. So have a lot of faith. And brothers and sisters, when you live in the present, there's always an opportunity for a new beginning. And don't look for the light at the end of the tunnel, because the light is and always will be within you. So light up the tunnel and find your way through the darkness. This is Orra the Informationalist from the Network of Awareness, saying peace, love, and light, and all praises to the Most High. Shalom.